From Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, Florida, United Launch Alliance presents live Delta IV launch coverage. At Space Launch Complex 37, the Delta IV rocket is fueled and ready to launch GPS-2F9, the 9th next-generation Global Positioning System satellite mission for the United States Air Force.
Range, go for launch. Roger, go for launch.
T-minus 3, 2, 1.
Atlas engine ignition.
Liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy rocket.
This is Delta Mission Control at T-minus 4 minutes and holding. This planned 30-minute hold allows Launch Conductor Ed Kidda and the team time to address any final issues before proceeding with the terminal count. Today's 18-minute launch window opens at 2:36 p.m. Eastern Time. Good afternoon and welcome to Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. I'm Courtney Fritz and I'll be your commentator for today's launch. GPS-2F9 delivery on orbit is scheduled to take place approximately 3 hours, 15 minutes after liftoff, and because of that long duration, we'll conclude our live coverage approximately 30 minutes after launch. Later in the broadcast, ULA's Matt Donovan will be answering your questions live from our Denver Operations Support Center. In the studio, I will be joined by Lieutenant Zach Peters from the Air Force GPS Directorate to discuss the capabilities of the GPS constellation. If you have a question about the Delta IV, please submit it via Twitter or Facebook using hashtag AskULA. We'll answer as many of your questions as we can during the show. Today's launch is the 9th Block 2F satellite and the first of 3 planned Block 2F missions scheduled to launch this year. GPS, or Global Positioning System, is a space-based positioning system consisting of a minimum of a 24-satellite constellation providing navigation and timing information to military and civilian users worldwide. The signals are so accurate that time can be measured to within a millionth of a second, velocity within a fraction of a mile per hour, and location to within a meter. Built by Boeing, the next generation 2F series provides improved capabilities for military and civil users and a new third civil signal, L5, for commercial aviation and safety of life applications. This is Delta Mission Control at T-minus 4 minutes and holding. We will now go to Matt Donovan via webcam in the Denver Operations Support Center to answer a few questions. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Courtney. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be able to join you from snowy Denver, Colorado today. Behind me, you can see our Denver Operations Support Center, or as we call it, the DOSC. Our engineering team is preparing for the final preps for launch. In the DOSC, we have a lot of the system experts and our core engineering team here in Denver ready to support the team at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station during the pre-launch count, as well as what we have going on in the plus count, with help with any anomaly resolution and to verify the system performance and that we're ready to launch. I'm excited today to be able to take some of the questions that you've been asking on Twitter and Facebook with the hashtag AskULA tag. So let's get to some of your questions. The first question I've got is from @BradwayRE, and he's asking, what role does launch time play in the mission? ULA seems to launch at all hours of the day. And that's a very good question. I'll tell you, this is one of our favorite launch times, nice and in the middle of the afternoon. But the launch time is really dictated by orbital mechanics, with exactly where our customer needs to place the satellite as far as inclination and total orbit. We have a team that calculates based on the rotation of the Earth and other factors, including the performance of the vehicle, what's the right time of day to launch and what that right launch window is. We also use that to help dictate what the right orbit is, and so that helps us look at whether it's Vandenberg Air Force Base or Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, as it is today, for where we need to launch that vehicle to meet the customer requirements. So thanks for that question. Let's look at some other questions that have come in real quick. Patrick from Facebook asks, how difficult is it when scheduling a launch to calculate the window through satellites and space debris? So this is kind of a follow-on to the last question as far as how we find that right launch time. And that is becoming increasingly difficult. As most folks have heard, we continue to see a level of space debris that makes it a little bit more difficult to be able to navigate through all that stuff. And we're taking proactive actions as far as disposal burns, like we'll be doing for some of our upcoming missions, to be able to make sure that we don't continue to add to that space debris. But we work with customers and support staff from the Air Force and other organizations to define what we call COLAs that tell us from a collision avoidance perspective sure that we're not running into any areas of debris or any other major objects out there in orbit like the International Space Station. So that helps us make sure that we're on a path that's clear. And remember, space is a pretty big place. Let's look at our next question that came in from at the Old Man Par, and they asked, how much longer is the lifespan of Delta IV, until 2019 or 2020? So that we're launching a Delta IV medium vehicle today, and as our CEO, Tori Bruno, has announced recently, we're looking to retire that vehicle in that 2018-2019 timeframe, but we're fully committed to launching all the missions that our customers asked us to launch on that Delta IV medium configuration. And then what we'll be able to do beyond that is continue to launch our Delta IV Heavy, so the Delta IV itself isn't going away. As long as our customer needs that kind of capability in the future, we'll continue to launch that Delta IV Heavy. With our next generation launch system coming on board and our Atlas V capability, we can still span all the requirements that our customer has for missions. The next question that we got came in from at Gabby Chass, and they asked, what does the launch team in Denver do that's different from the team at the launch site, and could we launch without them? So this team here in Denver behind me, as I mentioned, contains a lot of our responsible engineers for the system. So they're there to support the small team that we send to the launch site, as well as the launch operations team that's processing us through the countdown and preparing us for launch today. So when we have any anomalies that come up during the count, we can use the expertise and capability of this team to support those folks, to get those resolved and to verify that we're ready to launch. And then also, as we're watching the mission with the telemetry that we get sent back from the vehicle real time, we're able to monitor the system performance and verify that everything's performing as it should to be able to deliver the mission. Our next question that came in was from at DanSpace77. And he asked, with the future retirement of Delta IV, is there any plans to put one on display anywhere, a rocket garden, maybe a museum? If you've ever gotten a chance to get down to Cape Canaveral, Florida, or maybe you've been out in Huntsville, Alabama, those are two great places to go see rocket gardens and have a lot of the vehicles that have enabled us to get to where we're at today. As I mentioned earlier, our Delta IV Heavy capability will be continuing for up to hopefully even the next 10 years or as long as our customer needs it. So we have plenty of time to figure out if there is the right opportunity to be able to put a launch vehicle on display for the public to be able to see in one of those forums. The next question that came in was from at C. Kriziak, and they asked, I've heard the second stage does something called a barbecue roll. What is that, and why is it necessary? So that's one of the slang terms that we use, a barbecue roll. So our Delta Cryogenics second stage, once we get into orbit, is exposed to the vacuum of space. And in the vacuum of space, you get extremely warm temperatures coming from that part of the vehicle that's exposed to the sun, and you get exceptionally cold temperatures for the parts of the vehicle that's hidden from the sun and just exposed to the cold vacuum of space. So during this mission in the close phases, we will rotate the vehicle at what's called a barbecue roll to be able to even out the thermal environments on the vehicle to make sure that the tanks, the components, the satellite, all the rest of that integrated stack that's going through that coast phase is appropriately thermally conditioned so that we were prepared to continue the mission when we get to that next burn. And I've got just a couple more questions that we have here to get a chance to answer now. Again, at C. Kriziak was asking, my friend Emily from Huntsville wants to know, what is Max-Q? So during today's flight, you'll hear Steve Agate during our plus count commentary call out Max-Q. And what Max-Q is basically the period in the flight when we experience maximum dynamic pressure on the vehicle. It's one of the most extreme environments that our vehicle and our payload has to fly through on its way to space. And so the reason that's important is that a lot of the components we test are verified to be able to operate in those extreme environments on our way up to space. And it's important that we get through that successfully and are able to move on to the follow-on phase of the flight with a fully functioning vehicle. And the last question we'll take right now is from, again, at Bradway RE. And it's, how long does the Delta IV take to become supersonic, and is there a supersonic boom? So it's a good question. That actually ties back into the Max-Q phase, is that that tends to be a period of phase where we start to go transonic and get to our Max-Q phase of flight and then break the sound barrier. So the answer is yes, we do go through a supersonic regime. For this mission in particular, based on our profile, we're expected to hit that about 48 seconds after liftoff. And there will be a sonic boom, but it will be far enough away that you won't be able to hear it. So from that perspective, we won't be rattling any windows out at Cape Canaveral. So thanks a lot for those questions. I look forward to being able to come back later in the broadcast and answer some more of your questions. Remember to submit those to #AskULA. And why don't we send it back to Courtney in Florida.
Matt, thanks so much for answering those questions, and we'll see you later in the show. Again, if you have any questions, please submit them to hashtag AskULA. This is Delta Mission Control at T-minus 4 minutes and holding. Launch countdown operations are continuing and the team is not working any issues. The launch team recently received a final weather briefing and was told that the weather is within the launch commitment criteria for today's liftoff. The probability of violating launch constraints is 10%. The ground winds are 4 knots out of the southwest and the temperature is 73 degrees Fahrenheit. So we are proceeding towards liftoff with a planned T0 of 2:36 p.m. Eastern.
minus 17 minutes.
United Launch Alliance is using the Delta IV Medium Plus 4.2 configuration to launch GPS 2F9. This is the 29th Delta IV Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle mission since the inaugural flight in 2002. The Delta IV is produced in Decatur, Alabama, and is comprised of a common booster core powered by the Aerojet Rocketdyne RS-68 engine, 2 Alliant Tech Systems solid rocket motors, and a Delta cryogenic second stage powered by the Aerojet Rocketdyne RL-10B2 engine. The GPS 2F9 satellite was encapsulated inside a 4-meter diameter payload fairing on February 28th. The encapsulated payload fairing was transported to Space Launch Complex 37 and mated to the Delta IV launch vehicle on March 10th. In preparation for launch, the Mobile Service Tower, or MST, was rolled back earlier today, revealing the Delta IV launch vehicle. The 33-story MST weighs over 9 million pounds and is rolled to its launch position 300 feet north of the Delta IV launch vehicle. The Delta IV stands 206 feet tall, or about 20 stories, and weighs approximately 721,000 pounds fully fueled. The Delta IV delivers more than 821,000 pounds of thrust off the launch pad, and approximately 4 minutes later, at stage separation, it weighs just 20% of what it did at liftoff. For those watching the broadcast, you're looking at launch video taken this morning at Space Launch Complex 37. This is Delta Mission Control at T-minus 4 minutes and holding. GPS satellites serve and protect our warfighters by providing navigational assistance for U.S. military operations on land, at sea, and in the air. Civilian users around the world also use and depend on GPS for highly accurate time, location, and velocity information. GPS 2F9 is one of the next generation GPS satellites, incorporating various improvements to provide greater accuracy, increase signals, and enhance performance for users. While the team completes final preparations, let's take a look at today's flight.
The following profile details the important events of this mission using approximate times.
5. We have ignition of the RS-68 main engine. 2, 1, 0. Liftoff.
The Delta RS-68 main engine and 2 strap-on solid rocket motors ignite to lift the vehicle away from the pad. Shortly after liftoff, Delta begins its initial pitch and yaw maneuvers to attain the proper ascent profile and minimize aerodynamic loads. Delta IV reaches Mach 1, the speed of sound, at 48 seconds. At 61 seconds, the vehicle reaches maximum dynamic pressure. At 1 minute 40 seconds, the solid rocket motors are jettisoned. Approaching main engine cutoff, the Delta IV is burning propellant at a rate of approximately 1,050 pounds per second, flying at more than 70 miles in altitude, 210 miles downrange, and traveling at nearly 12,150 miles per hour. Main engine cutoff occurs just over 4 minutes into the flight. 7 seconds after main engine cutoff, the first stage is jettisoned. Second stage engine ignition takes place at 4 minutes 30 seconds into the flight. At 4 minutes 40 seconds, the payload fairing is jettisoned. Following the first cutoff of the second stage engine at just over 15 minutes, the mission enters a 2-hour 46-minute coast phase. At 3 hours 2 minutes, the second stage engine is restarted for a second and final burn. Following a 2-minute burn, cutoff of the second stage engine occurs. At 3 hours 15 minutes, the second stage releases the GPS 2F satellite for the United States Air Force.
MEQ, initiate day logger just prior to the L7 pole.
Roger.
ALC, start T4 master script.
Roger.
Today's flight is the 57th launch of an operational GPS satellite since the first lifted off from Cape Canaveral on February 14, 1989, riding atop the inaugural Delta II rocket. Over a span of 20 years, ULA's Delta II launch vehicle delivered the first 48 Global Positioning System satellites to orbit. With the debut of the 2F series, the next generation of GPS satellites, ULA's larger and more powerful Delta IV and Atlas V evolved expendable launch vehicles were called into service. To date, 5 GPS 2F satellites have launched on Delta IV launch vehicles and 3 on Atlas V launch vehicles, demonstrating the mission capability and manifest flexibility that ULA provides.
L minus 10 minutes.
RC, verify solar radiation limits acceptable for launch. Verified.
Terminal count briefing. If a condition exceeds a launch constraint any time after terminal count status check, the observer shall announce hold, hold, hold on channel 1, identify their station, and briefly state the reason for the hold.
All communications switch to channel 1. All personnel and visitors remain in present position until launch. Maintain operational silence in the LCC.
LCFMA.
Go ahead.
Primary wind load relief files been loaded into RIFCA and verified. Internal checksum 73 Delta Bravo.
Roger. All steps are complete prior to the status check.
L-8 minutes.
This is Delta Mission Control at T-minus 4 minutes and holding. We remain in the planned 30-minute built-in hold as preparations for the launch continue. Launch conductor Ed Kidda will poll the launch team in a few moments for the final go to resume the Delta 4 launch countdown. 31 engineers and managers will be polled for the system status and readiness to proceed with the launch. This is the final status check before launch, and all Delta vehicle systems, ground systems, the spacecraft, and the U.S. Air Force Eastern Range. The vehicle system readiness poll includes electrical systems, hydraulics, pneumatics, propulsion systems, flight control, and propellants. Final processing steps just prior to launch include completing propellant topping of both vehicle stages, securing propellant tanks, and pressurizing tanks to flight pressures. Let's listen as Ed Kidda performs the final polling of the launch count team.
L-7 minutes.
Status check to proceed with terminal count. MEQ.
Go.
MEA.
Go.
HYE.
Go.
LOX 1.
Go.
LOX 2.
Go.
VP.
Go.
PNE.
Go.
BP.
Go.
ATC 1.
Go.
PEA.
Go.
Fuel 1.
Go.
Fuel 2.
Go.
TM 1.
Go.
ATC 3.
Go.
TM 2.
Go.
FMA.
Go.
VE.
Go.
EEA.
Go.
GE.
Go.
SYS.
Go.
DSE.
Go.
Timer.
Go.
ECS.
Go.
QE.
Go.
USO.
Go.
OSL.
Go.
VSE.
VSC is go.
ALC.
Go.
AC.
AC is go.
RC.
Clear to proceed.
LD.
The launch vehicle is ready to launch.
MD.
This is the MD. You have permission to launch.
Proceeding with the count.
L-6 minutes.
MEQ. Establish swing arm lock pins pull.
Active.
SYS. Establish record on change list activated.
Activated.
Polling is complete, and the launch team has given the go for launch. The countdown will resume approximately 2 minutes from now. At T-minus 4 minutes, in counting, the team will enter the terminal count and will begin securing the second stage liquid oxygen tank. At T-minus 3 minutes 32 seconds, CBC liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen tank securing is started, which includes closing the propellant fill and drain valves. Also at T-minus 3 minutes 32 seconds, vehicle transfer from ground facility power to its own internal battery power will be complete. At T-minus 3 minutes, the vehicle ordnance system will be armed and the CBC liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen propellant tanks are verified to be at flight pressure and flight level. At 2 minutes prior to liftoff, the team will verify that the hydraulic system is pressurized as well as confirm CBC, DCSS, and FTS battery voltages. At T-minus 1 minute 20 seconds, the team will begin securing the second stage liquid hydrogen tank. At T-minus 60 seconds, the eastern range readiness is verified. At T-minus 50 seconds, the DCSS liquid hydrogen tank is secured at flight level. At T-minus 15 seconds, the ROFEs, or sparklers, are ignited to burn off excess hydrogen at the base of the vehicle. Liftoff will occur at T0. After liftoff, you'll hear the voice of Steve Agid providing launch vehicle ascent data.
T-minus 4 minutes and counting.
Upper stage lock securing started. CBC propellant tank securing started.
Vehicle transferring internal.
T-minus 3 minutes 50 seconds.
The countdown clock has resumed, and we are proceeding toward a 2:36 p.m. Eastern liftoff.
32 seconds. 3 minutes 30.
Vehicle transfer internal complete.
Upstage lock secure at flight level.
CBC LH2 secured.
CBC lock secured.
CBC pre-press started.
T-minus 3 minutes 7 seconds. T-minus 3 minutes.
Vehicle ordnance arming. Vehicle ordnance armed.
CBC locks at flight pressure and flight level.
T-minus 2 minutes 30 seconds and counting. Once the rocket lifts off, it will only take about 48 seconds to reach Mach 1 or the speed of sound.
T-minus 2 minutes.
TPA script running.
Hydraulic press at 4,000.
CBC LH2 at flight pressure and flight level.
T-minus 1 minute 30 seconds.
T-minus 1 minute 27 seconds and counting. The launch vehicle payload, ground systems, and eastern range are go for launch.
1 minute 20 seconds.
Upper stage LH2 securing started.
T-minus 1 minute.
Engines are box go.
T-minus 58 seconds.
T-minus 50 seconds. T-minus 45.
Launch enable. GE main power off.
Main power off. Upper stage LH2 secure at flight level.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Status check.
T-minus 30 seconds and counting.
Go GPS. Green board.
25.
Flight lock in.
23.
SRM TDC blowdown.
15.
Rofi ignition.
10.
T-minus
Kisser
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, we have ignition of the RS-68 engine, and we have liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV rocket carrying the 9th GPS-2F satellite for the United States Air Force. The Global Positioning System provides worldwide positioning, navigation, and timing service for military and civilian users.
20 seconds into the flight. Good engine control on the first stage. Now passing 30 seconds. Altitude now 1.5 nautical miles. Velocity 1,659 feet per second. Downrange distance 3.8 nautical miles. 40 seconds in. Chamber pressure beginning to decrease in the
You are
solid
hearing the
rocket motors
voice
as
of Steve
expected.
Agate providing launch vehicle ascent data.
50 seconds. Mach 1. Vehicle going transonic. Coming up on the 1 minute mark. Mark, 1 minute, 1 second, max Q, maximum dynamic pressure in the vehicle. "70 seconds in. We have about 20 seconds left in the solid rocket motors before they burn out as we pass 11.5 nautical miles. Standing by for burnout. We have burnout, standing by for separation. We have separation, good separation of the solid rocket motors. 1 minute, 50 seconds in. Now T plus 1 minute, 57 seconds into the flight. The Delta IV rocket now only weighs 1/2 as much as it did at launch, burning propellant at 1,849 pounds per second. 2 minutes, 7 seconds in. Altitude now passing 25.6 nautical miles, velocity 5,724 feet per second, downrange distance 35.5 nautical miles. 2 minutes, 20 seconds in. Chamber pressure holding exactly as we'd like it to be in the first stage. Very little engine movement. 2 minutes, 37 seconds in. Now passing 35 nautical miles, velocity 7,655 feet per second, downrange distance 61.8 nautical miles. 2 minutes, 50 seconds in. About 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining in first stage flight as we're coming up on the 3 minute mark. Mark, 3 minutes into the flight. Altitude now passing 42.7 nautical miles, velocity 9,592 feet per second, downrange distance 91.13 nautical miles. 3 minutes, 12 seconds in. As we continue to accelerate, we're standing by for the area of our maximum skin temperature on our fairing about 2 seconds from now. Now in that area. 3 minutes, 30 seconds. About a half a minute remains now until we go to the partial thrust command on the first stage. 3 minutes, 40 seconds in. Still looking good. We'll be going to the partial thrust command about 15 seconds from now. Standing by for partial thrust, about 57% of the full thrust mode. And we have the partial thrust command. Standing by for main engine cutoff. We have main engine cutoff. Standing by for stage separation. And we have stage separation. NEDS deploy is in work. Nozzle is going into its position. Standing by for igniter spark. And we have igniter spark. And we have ignition. Ignition on the second stage. Second stage chamber pressure is beginning to rise. Standing by for fairing separation. And we have payload fairing separation. 4 minutes, 52 seconds into the flight. Chamber pressure is good on the second stage, right where we want it to be.
This is Delta Mission Control at L plus 5 minutes 2 seconds. We've just heard Steve Agid report the successful execution of the events comprising the early portion of today's mission, and all systems continue to operate nominally. The Delta IV second stage and GPS 2F satellite are traveling over the Atlantic Ocean in a northeasterly direction and up the east coast of the United States. The mission is now in the first of 2 planned RL-10 second stage engine burns, and all systems continue to operate nominally. This burn will last approximately 11 minutes. I am joined now by Lieutenant Zach Peters. Hi, Lieutenant. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Courtney. I'm excited to be here to witness this spectacular launch.
To start off, can you tell us the current status of the GPS 2F program?
Sure. The government has purchased 12 GPS 2F satellites, 4 of which have been successfully launched last year. This puts us at 9 GPS 2F satellites on orbit and meeting all mission requirements. There are 3 more satellites in the pipeline. One is in storage, one is in launch processing here at the Cape, one is in production testing. That final GPS 2F satellite will be complete this year, with a launch scheduled to occur in early 2016.
Okay, well then can you tell us about the GPS constellation?
The GPS constellation remains healthy, stable, and robust, with 30 operational satellites on orbit. The legacy GPS satellites have remained operational well past their design lives. Today we have 3 of the original GPS Block 2A satellites still operating and providing reliable positioning, navigation, and timing services. 15 of the 19 GPS 2R and 2RM satellites are beyond their 7.5-year design life. The need for the GPS 2F capability is vital to update the GPS constellation and maintain a high level of accuracy required by the GPS system. We are launching the new GPS 2F satellites to increase GPS signal capabilities, increase user accuracy with improved space atomic clocks, and reduce overall constellation sustainment risk.
So, how does GPS work anyway?
GPS utilizes a series of radio signals broadcast by a fleet of at least 24 satellites on orbit around the Earth. Currently, the GPS constellation has 30 active satellites. The GPS is a space-based radio positioning system comprised of at least 24 satellites. These satellites, along with the associated hardware, software, systems engineering, operations, and sustainment, are operated by the United States Air Force and provide the military and civilian communities positioning, navigation, and timing services free of charge. There are a total of 6 GPS orbital planes, each with at least 4 satellites. The GPS satellites are approximately 20,200 kilometers from the surface of the Earth in a medium Earth orbit, which is nearly circular and inclined 50 degrees. GPS is based on the fundamental concepts of time, distance, and the speed of radio waves, which is approximately that of the speed of light. The GPS signal is actually a radio wave that is emitted from each satellite and is basically the satellite's position and time. A GPS receiver on the ground receives these signals, and based on the time the signals are transmitted and received, it can calculate the distance from itself to those satellites and use that to formulate a positioning solution. It takes a minimum of 4 GPS satellites to determine a position on the Earth. This position, combined with the geographical map or grid in the receiver, allows a user to discern the location on Earth.
Changing gears a bit, Lieutenant Peters, why did you decide to join the Air Force?
I was originally attracted to the Air Force because of its professionalism and higher calling. It also helped that the Air Force paid for my college education at the Air Force Academy. I'd always had a lot of respect for the military, and from growing up overseas, I realized a lot of other countries had that same respect. Therefore, I was interested in attending one of the service academies after high school. I ended up choosing the Air Force Academy because of its emphasis on technology and personal development. When you attend a service academy, you have a minimum commitment of 5 years after graduation. So here I am.
Will you provide some background on how you got this position?
Yeah, actually at the Air Force Academy I found out I was colorblind and I couldn't have any rated positions. So I ended up choosing to be a financial officer because I thought that with the looming budget cuts it would make it more challenging and rewarding. I spent 2 years in Germany managing the budget for a U.S. tenant unit base on a NATO military base before I came to the Space and Missile Centers in LA. I'm currently working as an earned value management and cost analyst.
So how does your job help the GPS mission?
My current position supports the GPS mission in 2 ways. First, I analyze and report Boeing's cost and schedule performance metrics to the United States Air Force. Essentially, I let the Air Force leadership know if the satellite that we purchased is coming in on time and on budget. Secondly, I provide the program office with cost estimates that the Air Force leadership can use to ensure the program, ensure we can continue to fund the program.
Lieutenant Peters, that is great information. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks, glad to be here.
A little over 5 minutes remain in this first burn of the second stage. There'll be 2 burns in today's flight. This burn has about 5 minutes to go, and we're now 10 minutes, 30 seconds in. Now 10 minutes, 45 seconds into the flight. Altitude now at 147.1 nautical miles. Velocity 23,797 feet per second. At downrange distance 1,445.4 nautical miles. Mark, 11 minutes in. Still continuing to look good. Chamber pressure is holding right where we'd want it to be. Good engine control in the second stage at 4 minutes and 23 seconds remaining in the burn. In reviewing the mission events over the first few minutes of flight, major flight events occurred very close to their expected time. Coming up on 11 minutes, 40 seconds. Mark, 11 minutes, 40 seconds in. Altitude now at 142.08 nautical miles. Velocity 25,126 feet per second. At downrange distance, 1,648.3 nautical miles. Chamber pressure holding rock solid in the second stage with good engine control. Passing 12 minutes into the flight. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining in the first burn.
This is Delta Mission Control at L plus 12 minutes, 9 seconds. We're approaching the end of the first of 2 planned RL-10 second stage engine burns. The Delta IV and GPS satellite are flying over the North Atlantic Ocean, south of Greenland, and about midway between North America and Europe. Our next event, the first second stage engine cutoff, or SECO-1, is scheduled to take place just about 5 minutes from now. While we wait for the next mission event, let's take a look at video highlighting the important capabilities of the GPS Block 2F satellite.
The Global Positioning System is a marvel of the modern age. It consists of more than 30 GPS satellites circling the globe over 12,000 miles above us. In tightly controlled orbits, these U.S. Air Force satellites continuously transmit their signals to Earth. An extraordinary technology, GPS enables anyone with a GPS receiver to determine their precise location and the exact time anywhere in the world, usually within a meter and within a billionth of a second.
GPS is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's in our cars, it's in devices that you use to determine how far you've run or ridden your bicycle.
With billions of users and countless devices, it is easy to take GPS for granted. But it is the essential platform for innovations which enables us to do everyday things like buying gas at the pump and getting directions, and amazing things like tracking ice melts and saving lives in ways that were formerly impossible.
The beauty of the GPS system is that it's available for everyone. The cost of entry for any user is simply the cost of their receiver.
Boeing helped make GPS possible. It's been the U.S. Air Force's prime contractor on 4 major programs, replacing the initial group of satellites as their service lives were completed. Overall, Boeing has produced 2/3 of all GPS satellites, more than 40 in all.
Satellites are normally built in a low volume, perhaps 2 or 3 at most. And they're usually sit in one spot, and resources are brought to the satellite.
Now, to ensure that GPS is available whenever it's needed, Boeing has changed how satellites are made. It's producing 12 new GPS satellites using a streamlined process based on its efficient and advanced airplane assembly line techniques.
Our goal is to have the highest quality.
These new satellites bring next-generation performance to the GPS constellation we all use every day. As a result, they are delivering new levels of accuracy to what is already a remarkably accurate system, and they are being built in a much more efficient way, ensuring that this essential technology is available when we need it.
This is Delta Mission Control at T plus 15 minutes. The Delta IV carrying the 2F9 satellite lifted off from Space Launch Complex 37 at 2:36 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We're now approximately 1 minute away from the completion of the first of 2 planned RL-10 second stage engine burns. Let's join Steve Agate for mission progress.
Standing by. And the second stage engine has shut down. 15 minutes now, 42 seconds into the flight. Altitude 113.8 miles. Velocity 32,368 feet per second. The downrange distance 2,724 nautical miles.
This is Delta Mission Control at T plus 16 minutes, 11 seconds. Steve Agate just confirmed cutoff of the RL-10 engine. The mission has now entered an extended coast phase, which will last approximately 3 hours. Following SECA 1, the mission trajectory changes to a southeasterly heading, flying over Eastern Europe, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. It will continue in a south-southeasterly direction over the Indian Ocean. Following a short second burn of the RL-10 engine, the Delta IV cryogenic second stage will deliver the GPS 2F9 satellite to semi-synchronous orbit over the southern Indian Ocean, southwest of Australia. Separation will take place about 3 hours, 14 minutes after liftoff. Before we sign off, let's go back to Matt Donovan so he can answer a few more questions. Hello again, Matt.
Hi, Courtney. Thanks. That was a really exciting liftoff. The team here in Denver, we had a lot of folks collect to get a chance to watch that. We're obviously now in the coast phase. This is a great chance to answer some more of the questions that have come in from different folks on hashtag AskULA. The first question I've gotten is from @MMccombs1, and they're asking, what is the RS-68 propellant consumption rate for this flight profile? So when we're at full thrust, our RS-68 consumes about 1,600 pounds per second of liquid oxygen and about 260 pounds per second of liquid hydrogen. That's obviously a lot of propellant to be able to give us the thrust that we need out of the RS-68 and gotten GPS to where we're at right now. The second question that we got in was from @Joe Chapstick, and they asked, how fast will the Delta IV leave the Earth's gravity? So actually for this mission, the Delta IV never actually leaves the Earth's gravity because we are putting the GPS satellite in the Earth's orbit. But the top speed that we will see on this mission is about 32,000 feet per second, or about 22,000 miles per hour. So that's pretty fast that we'll be going orbital to be able to get GPS to where they need to go. The next question we had come in was from @Mark H. Enig, and they asked, how many pounds of thrust does the Delta IV medium rocket produce? So obviously we had solids for this mission, but just a standard Delta IV medium rocket with the RS-68 produces over 660,000 pounds of thrust at sea level for liftoff to help get us off the ground. Let's keep going through the questions that we've had come in here. The next one's from @FarMaitre, and they ask, what height and weight is the Delta IV rocket? The Delta IV is approximately 206 feet tall, or a little over 20 stories when you think about it, and that's the tip of the payload fairing that's used to encapsulate the satellite on top of the vehicle. So you saw the MST earlier. That whole building encapsulates the vehicle, so you can imagine that whole tower having to move to be able to get us clear for launch. And again, the rocket's almost 21 stories tall sitting on the launch pad. The next question we had come in was from @CosmicPenguin, and they asked, I remember that Delta IV GPS launches were launched southeast previously until last year. What changed to allow us to launch these on a northeasterly trajectory? So very astute observation relative to the kind of flight profile that we fly out of Cape Canaveral. And as I mentioned earlier in our discussion, we analyze for each mission as far as which orbital slot we are putting the satellite into, and the most efficient way for us to get that satellite to that orbital slot. And that dictated for these particular GPS orbits that we needed to change the trajectory of the launch and be able to launch more up the eastern seaboard rather than heading out over the Atlantic like we did for the southeasterly trajectory. So thanks for that question. Another question that we've had come in is at Berkemeyer JJ, and they ask, what will happen to the second stage today? Will it be deorbited or abandoned in orbit? So obviously our Delta Cryogenic second stage will be in the next couple hours working to deliver the GPS satellite to orbit. And after that, very much a concern that we want to make sure that we're out of the space of orbit where we're leaving these GPS satellites. So for today's mission, based on the orbit that we're sending it to, we're going to be sending it into a disposal orbit that's out of the way from where the GPS satellites are being placed. So that's a little bit of information for some of the questions that came in. Let's take a look and see if we've had a couple more come in recently that we can answer as well. So we did get one question from at Amanda Donovan, and Abby, age 9, asked, how many engines are on the rocket? Good question. So we have 2 liquid rocket engines that are on a Delta IV. So we have the RS-68 on the first stage, and then we have the RL-10B that's on the Delta Cryogenic second stage. So there's 2 engines, and then we have what we call solid rocket motors. So those are what get bolted on that like we had for today's GPS launch as well. So thank you so much. Really appreciate everybody asking your questions. It was great to be able to share with you from Denver today, which it's still snowing outside, but our whole Denver launch team that's here supporting and is here making sure that every wet dress rehearsal, every launch that we have goes off with a hitch and that we can deliver every time that our customer needs it. So you can keep the conversation going on Facebook and Twitter with the hashtag AskULA. Thanks so much for the questions today. Why don't we send it back to you, Courtney?
Thanks, Matt, and great job. I'd also like to thank Steve Agid for his support today, and of course, Lieutenant Zach Peters. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
As I mentioned at the top of the show, due to the long duration of this mission, we will now be concluding our live broadcast. GPS 2F9 separation from Delta IV will occur approximately 2 hours and 45 minutes from now. For more information about this launch, please visit us at www.ulalaunch.com or follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We'll leave you now with another look at the liftoff of the Delta IV rocket carrying the Air Force GPS Block 2F satellite. I'm Courtney Fritz, and on behalf of the entire launch team, thank you for joining us and have a great afternoon. 5, 4, 3, 2, we have ignition of the RS-68 engine, and we have liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV rocket carrying the 9th GPS 2F satellite for the United States Air Force. The Global Positioning System provides worldwide positioning, navigation, and timing service for military and civilian users.
20 seconds into the flight. Good engine control on the first stage.